Hello and welcome to this live webinar titled In-House Creative Teams, How to Get More Output in Half the Time, sponsored by Lucidpress with Scott Talbot. My name is Kelly and I will be your host and moderator today. Before we get started, I have a few short announcements. First, please note that all attendees will have their audio lines muted to avoid background noises. If you have any technical difficulties, please type them in the question box and I will attend to them right away. We'll answer questions at the end of this presentation. Please type all your questions into the question box. This webinar is being recorded and the video will be emailed to registrants within 2 business days. Now to our webinar. It is my pleasure to introduce Scott Talbot. Scott is the creative director at Lucidpress. He oversees all marketing, creative, advertising campaigns, and advocates for good design in Lucidpress product development. Prior to Lucidpress, he worked at Boncom, a small advertising agency focused on nonprofit and social good causes where he worked with the United Nations, Smithsonian, Library of Congress, and the Huntsman Cancer Institute. He is a native of San Diego, California, but has lived in Utah for the past 10 years. Outside of work, he enjoys spending time with his wife and son, camping, photography, and eating Mexican food. So Lucidpress is a design and brand management platform that empowers employees to create, customize, and distribute on-brand marketing collateral without needing the help of a designer every step of the way through professional, lockable templates. Now I'm going to turn it over to Scott. Scott, you can unmute yourself, and I won't jump in unless you need me to.
Thanks so much, Kelly. Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm Scott Talbot. Thanks for the intro, Kelly. I guess I wrote that intro last week. I forgot how it kind of sounded kind of cheesy. But yeah, I'm the creative director here at Lucidpress, and this webinar is in-house creative teams, how to get more output in half the time. I'm excited to be here and giving you this webinar. I'm really going to try and include some real-world tips and tricks here to help boost your in-house team. And we would love to have you guys ask some questions right here in the webinar. As Kelly said, just go ahead and put them in that questions box, and we're going to have a Q&A session at the end, and we'll go through them. So I have a little incentive. If you stick with me through the webinar, at the end, I'm going to post a link to one of our ebooks, The Impact of Brand Consistency. It's got a bunch of research and data we've done here at Lucidpress, and it can really help you as as a creative director, designer at your company. It'll give you some really solid numbers and stats to help advocate for good design and consistent branding. It's always good to know a little bit about who you're listening to. So I grew up in Escondido, California, which is a suburb of San Diego. If you're actually from Southern California, you know that Escondido isn't really like, people from San Diego wouldn't say Escondido is part of San Diego, but it's technically in the same county. But I grew up there, going to the beach, going in and out, eating burritos. It was a great time. But 10 years ago, I moved to Utah, and I've been here ever since. I really enjoy living in the mountains here. I love camping, outdoor adventures, all of that good stuff. I've worked in advertising for about 5 years. I switched before switching over to Lucidpress. When I first got out of college, I worked at a small local advertising agency where I did everything from like the ads that come in the mail, right? Like junk mail. I designed that. That's kind of how I cut my teeth, doing lots of those layout intensive ads, and then moved on to producing commercials and banner ads and digital and all of that. And then from there, I went to, like Kelly said, an agency called Boncom that focuses on nonprofit social good, where I was able to work on national level and international level accounts, and really expand my experience there. The 2 jobs were very different, but they have taught me a ton about advertising and marketing from 2 different aspects. I work for Lucidpress. So Lucidpress is a web-based design and brand management platform. Basically, it's a bit like if InDesign and Google Docs had a baby, that would be Lucidpress. It runs completely in the browser. All your files are in the cloud. It's collaborative and has extensive sharing and approval systems. But, I mean, to be clear, it's not a replacement for InDesign. It's meant to be a supplemental tool run alongside the Creative Cloud that we all use. Its real purpose is to save time, reduce workload and ensure brand consistency. But we'll talk about Lucidpress later. Today I'm going to be speaking directly to creative directors, but I think the tips I share here will be helpful for anyone in in-house creative teams, marketing directors, or anyone engaged in creative work. So I want to break up this presentation into 3 main parts. And my goal here is that when we're done, you'll come away with specific things that will help you get most out of your in-house teams. So let's get started with a little preface. So welcome to the arms race. And more specifically, welcome to the design arms race. The importance of design has never been so important as it is now. It has, the importance has just changed over the last few decades. Designers used to serve a very specific and limited purpose. Layouts had to be done by hand. Revisions took an extensive time. And in general, companies and marketing teams would require designers just less than they do now. With the proliferation of social media and different media channels, there's just a far bigger demand for personalized content. So as you can see here, the design process used to look like the process on the top. So back in, say, the Mad Men days, design was done by just a few highly skilled designers doing mass marketing to a single mass audience, right? So it was a very simple process. We had our marketer who would order some advertising, the designers would make it, and it would go to one audience. Now we have a whole bunch of different parties involved who are all requiring different collateral and different content. And they are all going out to different channels that require different formats and different lengths, right? The requirements for a landing page is totally different than the requirements for a Twitter and then a billboard and then a brochure. And that kind of variety in content just didn't exist a few decades ago. So with so many people who are creating marketing and sales materials on behalf of your company, this is really an arms race, right? It's which company can push the most best design content, who can innovate the most when it comes to design, who can present a broad, united front across all their media channels. And the companies that are doing that best are winning at their marketing, winning at their advertising. And the other weird thing is that we're in a weird place in our society where when a popular public company changes their logo, articles show up in major publications. It's mainstream news when Instagram, Airbnb, and Uber change their logos. It seems like everyone's got an opinion about it, right? You get these people who are super critical about design, people who would have never even thought about it before. Now it's part of our mainstream culture. It's part of our mainstream dialogue. And so you get people who see what we're doing as creative directors, as designers, and they've got these opinions about our work. And so we need to be on top of our game. So with this higher demand for content and a much more discerning audience, this puts us in a crunch. How can we possibly keep up with the demand to work quickly and to put out quality content at the same time, right? So with that framed up, let's dive into 3 main ideas that will help you get the most out of your teams. Okay, so the first one is to fuel up. So when filmmakers, industrial designers, sorry, excuse me, I'm getting ahead of myself here. So designers are given this difficult task of being creative, original, and inspiring with their work every single day. They can't just wait around for inspiration to strike. They have to deliver on schedule to a never-ending list of requests. I feel like personally, I'd have days where I'm like totally inspired. I come into work and I feel like I'm just cranking through work. Everything's easy. And there's other days where it's really a slog, where every new creative challenge is hard and I feel like my brain's just not working like it should. But the thing is because, we come into work every day. We can't just take a break because we're not feeling creative. We have to be able to just be creative in the moment. So your designers bring a level of practicality to their job, right? So we understand hierarchy, grids, typographic theory, best practices. We can bring kind of this practical knowledge, but it's our creative ability that's really going to make a difference when it comes to solving the creative problems for our clients or for our company, to really come up with something original, something inspiring, and something that will stand out in this crowd, in this crowded marketplace. I love this quote from Ed Catmull. He's the president of Pixar and Disney Animation. This quote is from his book, Creativity, Inc., which is a great book. Check it out. He said, "When filmmakers, industrial designers, software designers, or people in any other creative profession merely cut up and reassemble what has come before, it gives the illusion of creativity, but it is craft without art. Craft is what we're expected to know. Art is the unexpected use of our craft. Even though copying what has come before is a guaranteed path to mediocrity, it appears to be the safe choice. And the desire to be safe, succeed with minimal risk, can impact not just individuals, but also entire companies." So what he's saying here is, if we get caught in the cycle of just redoing what we've done before, we're just going to end up with mediocrity, and because that's going to be the easiest path. And honestly, as a designer, that makes total sense, because we can get so caught up in day-to-day tasks and the routine things that need to be made over and over again that we lose sight, we lose our focus on creating great design content to push our brands forward, to make sure we're competing in this visual digital space. So we all default to mediocrity. Like Transformers, it's a pretty mediocre movie. But it doesn't have to be that way. We don't need to default to mediocrity. So here's 3 tips to help you get out of that, to help you stay fueled up. So the first is to practice your craft. And by craft, I mean the main thing you're doing, your main job. So as a designer, that could be, practicing basic graphic design skills, and working to improve it and making sure you're getting out of the rut. See, there's always a better and faster, more efficient way to do what you're doing. Adobe is constantly adding new features into their products, and from what I've noticed, the longer we're out of school, the less likely we are to use these new features. I don't know if you've ever worked with a creative director or executive creative director who's been around in the business for 20 or 30 years, and their value is really in their experience, their wisdom. But if you've ever seen them use Adobe products, they're still using processes that made sense in 1997, right? And that's fine, but I think there's also a loss there when we're falling behind on our tools, when we're not engaging with the current best practices in our industry. So our first challenge is to actively engage, to take classes, tutorials, to ask questions, to learn how to hone our craft. Skillshare, Lynda, Udemy, those are all online class services that are a great source for honing your skill. I use Skillshare a lot. Some of my favorites on there are from the design duo, DKNG. They have a few classes on there that are really great. So last month I took a class from them about how to do screen printing and half-toning techniques in Illustrator, and totally opened up a new world to me of how Illustrator can be used to prepare files for screen printing, half-toning, and how to get certain effects in your screen printing projects. Another thing you can do is send your designers to conferences like Adobe Max or How Design Live. I've been to both conferences. They're both great. In fact, we went earlier this year to the How Design conference in Chicago. We had a great time. We'll talk about that a little more later. With travel and the tickets, these might be a little out of your team's budget or time. So what you can also do is go to a local meetup. There's local meetups in just about every city in the country. For example, my wife is a freelance graphic designer, and she was able to go to this local meetup here in Utah with with Becca Clayson and Gemma O'Brien, who are both really great hand letterers, do custom hand lettering design. And she was able to expand her skill set there. And that was something that was more accessible for us. It was less expensive. It was nearby, but still provided a great resource for honing your individual craft. So this tip, get out of your rut. Our next tip for fueling up is get out of the design box. So first I talked about honing your craft, right? You're a designer, learn how to be a better designer. My next tip is get out of that design box. Staying creatively sharp requires that we experience new things. So we need to stretch our abilities in new ways and not, in new ways that don't directly relate to our main job. So learn a new hobby, a new sport, get into a new cultural experience. I took up rock climbing and camping, painting. I got into some sewing. I have a few, they're like rucksacks, like Herschel backpacks that I made. I figured out how to, took this heavy duty duck cloth and crafted my own backpacks with the laptop sleeve and everything. And those are things that really helped me get out of the screen, get out of the things I usually do, to experience the world a little bit more. And what that does is it stretches your mind to be able to hold more stuff in it, to open up this reserve, this well of creative ideas. So encourage your designers to get out there, to learn how to rock climb and to weld and to change your own oil and to adopt a dog, and get them out of their comfort zone. After going to work where we're professionals and we know what we're doing and it's what we went to school for, let's go home and push ourselves to get out of our comfort zone and stretch our minds. And in the end, it's gonna, like I said, it's gonna make more mental room to put all this creative stuff, right? Where we can put little facts and jokes and little tidbits and all this extra information that in the end will help us be more creative when we need it at our job. Third tip to fuel up, connect with your customer. So like I said, we were able to go to the How Design conference, and I didn't just go to just participate in the classes, although that was awesome. I was able to go and help with our sales team. So here's our sales team on the right here. On the left, this is me. I'm sitting here listening to one of the speakers. Really great time. On the right, I'm the one with the beard and the glasses, second from the left there. And even though I'm usually spend my time, designing, overseeing creative projects, I was able to spend a couple days interacting directly with our customers, pitching our product, talking to people about their needs. And that was invaluable. As a designer, I'm removed from the experience of our users. But since I was able to interact with these potential customers, answer questions, hear their frustrations, connect with them, I can have a lot more empathy now in my work. I can see where they're coming from. I can better understand my job and what I need to do to connect to our customers. And I can't stress this enough. I feel like designers, creative teams are generally kept in a silo where they're kept away from other parts of the company, from clients, from customers. And I get that. We're creative people. We can be a little weird, right? You don't want to put the weird people in front of the clients. Okay, I get that. But it's so important to be able to understand where you fit in the process of selling your product, marketing your product, to be able to sit down with the customer, see them face to face, to hear what they have to say. Also, I got to meet this guy. I got to meet David Carson while I was there. He was just wandering around collecting swag and talking to people. I think he took some of our swag too. It was really great experience. So that's the last tip, excuse me, to help fuel up. You got to get in front of clients. So just to review, to help fuel up, practice your craft. And then after practicing your craft, learn new skills. Get out of your creative box. And the third is connect with your customers. All right, so the second main point here is to streamline your process. So we've done some research on design team processes, and we found that designers spend a significant amount of time doing mundane requests and revisions. So when we talk about getting more out of our design teams, what we're seeing is designers are spending a lot of time doing pretty like mindless work that isn't really engaging their full abilities, not engaging their creativity, their problem-solving skills. So we have some stats to show that. So this shows the response time for for requests for new content, and if you look here, for half of these respondents, it was at least a week. And for 19% of them, it was at least 3, 4, or even 3 or 4 weeks or even longer. I mean, that is crazy. In this design arms race where we're competing against the best designers in every other company, we have to be able to move faster. We have to be more nimble than that. So what can we do? So to streamlining your process, first tip, we need a clear creative brief. So you guys are creative directors. You know that creative briefs are essential. The best creative brief is short. Each word is labored over, and it functions, and it really functions as a sort of contract with everyone involved, and it gets everyone on the same page. And I think that's the important part of it. Is it's not just instructions to the designers like, here, go make this. Everyone who's involved on the project gets together on the creative brief and says, yes, we agree on this, we signed our names to it, and we're going to go and do it. The worst creative brief, on the other hand, is it's long, it's hastily thrown together, and no one cares about it. No one considers it binding. We can change the main aspects of the project weeks into the project. When I first got out of college, I was at this small advertising agency. One of my account managers came to me and she gave me a brief. And this brief was actually all the information she could find about her client printed out and then stapled together. It was about 50 pages long. And she said, here is your brief. I need a brochure about this content. And I get it. Sometimes we have to cut down content, make things fit, but I was young. I didn't understand that this wasn't the right way to do things. I took it and I was like, oh, this is a brief. Okay, let me see if I can figure this out. And I spent a lot of time turning my wheels, trying to figure out what was going on. The important part of the brief isn't even so much cutting down content, but focusing on what your main priorities are. So if we run into situations like that where your creative teams are getting creative briefs from your marketing team or your account managers that are unclear, that are too long, it's our job to go back and talk to them and see how we can make it better. We have to protect our designers, our design teams from poor briefs. And it can be an awkward experience to go back and be like, hey, this isn't clear. Obviously, we're not going to be confrontational about it, but we are kind of saying like, hey, let's do your job a little bit better. But those awkward conversations, in the end, they save headaches, they save frustration, in a big way. They cut down on revision times, and really it's the way you can cover your butt when if the brief isn't clear and things go sideways. Designers will always be on the hook for that. So as creative directors protecting our little design teams, it's our job to make sure the briefs are clear and to stand up for ourselves when they're not. The second tip is clear goals. So this ties into creative briefs in a big way. So obviously creative briefs talk about what the goals of a project are, but lots of times the goals can be surprisingly hard to narrow down. So here's a couple examples from you. One of the most common errors that marketing teams try to do is pack too much information into a piece of collateral or an ad. it's tempting to try and hit every single possible selling point, but what ends up happening is all the different selling points, they cannibalize each other, and they make the whole piece less effective. Let's take a look at these two examples. So on the left, they've got everything you would ever want to know. I mean, they have all the points here. Like, this is definitely the better option. It tells you all the great reasons why you should get a remodel from these guys. I mean, it tells you get a makeover, you get 40% off, you get to beat the VAT, whatever that is, you get a customer satisfaction guarantee. Why isn't this the best thing? And the reason is because all these messages, they're cutting into each other. They make it less effective. On the right, this classic ad, of course, the lemon ad, it's very focused. We only want to know, in this one situation, we only want to know one thing. We have one goal. And it actually has quite a bit of copy, especially compared to today's standards, but it draws you in. You want to know, what is this one thing they're trying to tell me? And that will always be more effective than throwing a ton of content at your users. So the best messaging is short, punchy, narrowly focused. So the thing is, without a clear goal, and this is more like an office politics thing, is that if you don't have a clear goal, when you start designing and it starts going around for approvals, there's going to be arguing and disagreements about the point of the project. And you know that it's going to be the designers who have to start making all these revisions. So a big way to save time is to make sure there's clear goals. The third tip to streamline your process, make sure you have clear approvals. So now that you have the creative brief in hand with a clear goal, you need to make sure that you know who is the person who can ultimately approve your project. Design by committee is death. You have to fight against that. Any project will be hamstringed if there are a bunch of people involved in what needs to be done. The fact is that there's plenty of people out there, and they all have opinions about your work, and just about all of them will be willing to voice them. So this is a cheesy stock image I found, and it seems like all these people are comforting this designer here as she cries into her hands, but actually they're all smiling and patting her on the back and saying, I have one more design change for you. Can you add this feature? Can you make the logo bigger? And everyone's so happy to add their opinion, but what ends up happening is the designers, they get caught in the middle of it. So we need to narrow down who their approvals are. The other risk is, in this kind of situation, the design process can end up being a proxy power battle between different egos in the company. And you'll be caught in between these people who disagree and are unwilling to talk to each other about their problems, but instead will go through the designer instead. So for the benefit of the creative team and the company, there's got to be one single approver. And it's our job to find that approver and to make sure that other voices, you set up some boundaries and say, sure, we appreciate your feedback, we appreciate your comments, but so-and-so is going to have the final say on this. So in summary, to streamline your process, you need a clear creative brief, clear goals, and clear approvals. Third main point on how to get the most out of your in-house team. This one I call all hands on deck. So in this fast-paced arms race, right, everyone needs to be committed to great design, and they all need to be doing what they can to help. So we just talked about design by committee is death, right? And I believe in that strongly. But we also live in a time when the demands for content are so great. There are effective ways we can help. We can get other people in the company to help and to help spread the workload so designers can focus on what they do best, which is creative problem solving and design innovation. There are smaller, more mundane things that designers don't need to be doing. So we need to, so the demand for new content, it's accelerating, right? There's just too much work to do. So we need to democratize the design process. So I'm saying we need to give access to more people, to get them invested, to give them the tools they need to be able to make the right choices, and be able to take a lot of that workload off of your designers. So my first tip is strong brand guidelines. So, of course, brand guidelines are important, and it's not just what fonts to use or colors to use, but also, style of photos, patterns, examples of use, writing tones, and it all really needs to paint a picture of the visual identity of the company. And it should be easy enough for everyone to understand, and it should be easy enough to find for everyone. And some research we did, and this is in that free book that you guys will get a link to at the end, but so in some research we did, among companies where they said they had a good or very good brand style guide, only 40% of them said it was easy to find. 40%. Among companies where respondents said they had a poor style guide, it was 9%. So are you surprised that people don't feel invested or don't feel like they have the resources to be able to contribute to the company's visual identity when they can't even find the guidelines? So one, of course, the guidelines should be effective and should be really thorough. Here's a few examples here of great brand guidelines, but we also want to make sure people can find them. So that usually means actually having it in more than one place, so like a PDF, an email, a website, or what you can do is have a living brand guide, and that's something that Lucidpress does really well. So we actually built into our product, a company can, they'll have a license to Lucidpress, and then they can set the brand guide within the product, and users can easily go in and pick the right colors, the right fonts, the right images, the right logos, so that everyone is always on brand. You don't lose that consistency. The second tip here to get everyone hands on deck is to templatize. And I know what you're saying, like, templatize? Use templates? Really? And yeah, templates are the solution here. And let me tell you why. So it's tempting for our creative teams to take on every single project to want to solve all the problems. And I think that's just in the nature of designers. Like, we want to be problem solvers. We want to serve other people. We want to help people, find solutions. But what ends up happening is we get stuck with all of these mundane requests, and it's a major problem. We talked to the largest hospital group here in Utah, the Intermountain Healthcare, to their in-house design team. And they said, we spend 75 to 80% of our time doing small requests. They said practically all our time doing small requests. They don't have time for anything else. And that's not a rare story. That happens all the time. And what you can do is take templates of the most frequently requested things. So are there flyers that need to be requested, invitations that are requested over and over again. And with a product like Lucidpress, you can actually take those templates and lock down different parts of them. You can lock down where the text boxes are. You can lock down the fonts they can use. You can lock down the logo so that when someone goes in, how many times have you ever had someone request, oh, I need this flyer again. I just need you to change the date, or change the date and the address. And that only takes a half an hour for your designers to do, but when it's stacked in with everything else, and the time it takes to track the project, to deliver it, to communicate via email, that's a lot of time. It adds up. And so I think this is where the templates really help. So your designers can make this invitation once. And when the date needs to be changed, you empower the other people in your company to be able to make those changes and find those solutions themselves. And because it's all locked down, you've set the brand guidelines, you've made the templates, you've made them strong, you're not risking your brand consistency. So you can take these small projects off the workload of your designers and let your designers focus on new creative concepts, real, true creative problem solving, and working on the bigger projects that'll matter more to your company. Yeah, and again, so this is just an example of our template system in Lucidpress that makes it super easy for people to be able to jump in and find a template that they need to use. So in summary, for this last part, we need a strong brand guide, and you need to templatize, because we need to democratize the design process. Too long we have just made our designers do all of the work. It's time to spread a little bit of that work around. So let me summarize a little bit. So we're just about done. I want to summarize everything we've talked about so far. The first is to fuel up. Designers need a well of creativity to pull from at all times. So take the time to invest in some new activities, some new experiences. Encourage your designers to get out there to fill their well. The second is to streamline the process. Our designers are workhorses. Make sure they're making the most of their time by streamlining your process, making sure your projects are focused and your designers have all the information they need. The third is all hands on deck. Let's democratize the design process. Let's take small requests that the designers don't even need to mess with. Let's take those off the designer's plate and help everyone in the company be able to get the collateral they need in a timely manner. So that's the end of my presentation. So we looked at a few stats when we were going through the presentation. You can go here to download that now. So it's bit.ly/brand consistency report. Pretty easy. And we'll include that link in an email we send out later too. And then if you're interested in learning more about Lucidpress and the design process that we use, go ahead and go over to lucidpress.com/demo. All right, let's look at a couple Q&A. Will these slides be shared out? Yes. So this webinar is being recorded, and we're going to send out the slides and the audio in a couple days. Here's another question. You mentioned needing to fuel up. Any other specific books or trade shows you'd recommend? Great question. So books, I'd highly recommend Creativity Inc., which I mentioned before. I would also recommend Creative Courage, I believe it's called, from the guys over at IDEO. Really, really great book. I also recommend a small book from Austin Kleon called Steal Like an Artist. It's a quick read, but really inspiring to get you fueled up, looking for new solutions for things. And for trade shows, How Design is fantastic. Adobe Max is fantastic. I'd also recommend Brand New, which is pretty narrowly focused on visual identity for companies. That's from the guys who run underconsideration.com and brandnew.com. Fantastic websites, fantastic conference. Any tips for at-distance teams? So this is a good question. So what can you do when all your employees are in different places? I think the key here is to use online solutions. So like Slack, of course, is a great solution. That's basically a chat interface for work. And Lucidpress is a great solution too. One of the I love Creative Cloud. I work in it all the time. One of the problems is that it's not collaborative. And so one of the great things about Lucidpress is it's super easy to be able to access files, see each other's work, and it's a great solution for people who are working remotely to be able to participate in the design process. How do you personally prioritize your creative tasks? That's a good question. There's a book called Essentialism that came out a little while ago that has really helped me focus on how to prioritize my creative tasks. The main question is this the best thing to be doing right now that will contribute the most to the company? And there's a lot of good things. There's a lot of great things that I can be doing at all times. There's only one or two best things, right? What is the main thing that I should be doing sorry, I lost my train of thought. I was looking at the other questions. What is the main thing I need to be doing to contribute to the company? And that requires kind of going a little KonMari on things and eliminating work and saying no to things. And once you get that figured out, your priorities fall into place. Here's another question. What do you recommend to avoid errors and mistakes in the iteration process with the client? So this going back and forth with the client can be a time-consuming process, and you can get errors and mistakes that fall into it. The biggest thing I've found is it's easy for a client to say, "Oh, can you do this?" and email it, and you go ahead and make the change and send it over, and "Oh, can you do this too?" and then make the change and send it over. What is better is to make sure you're keeping a log of all changes that have happened, and that you and your client are always on the same page about what the request is and what has been sent back. Again, I mean, I don't want to preach too much here, but Lucidpress really does have a great solution to this because it has commenting built into the product, so that you might have to keep a list of current tasks or changes within just an email chains, which can get messy. And in Lucidpress, you can go ahead and just like get in there, make comments, be able to track the comments, be able to track changes super easily within the document, and your client can see the document. If you can restrict it so your client can't change things, but they can see it and suggest changes. Thanks for that question. That was a great question. Here's another one. How do you go about when working with difficult clients? Okay, so we've all had difficult clients, and it's like difficult clients can be like soul sucking, like we got into this to make great creative work. We really want to give solutions to people, and difficult clients can just make it seem like, ugh, I don't know why I even got into this business. So with difficult clients, the key thing is being clear, being so crystal clear at every step. And the thing is you have to cover your butt at every step. And that's a pain because you want to work in a situation where it's where you trust people, where you trust that everyone is striving towards the same thing, where you don't have to worry about people getting upset, but that's just not always the case. And I recently worked with a client where with a freelance client where we got into a dispute about expectations of the project, and I had to go back and say, look, this is the outline of the work we agreed to. I have accomplished this, and this. Where did we get off on the wrong page? And we were able to use that I was able to use that as a tool to be able to, say, this is where we agreed we would be, and I'm sorry that your expectations aren't being met, but this is the expectations we agreed to last month. And that kind of thing is really what you have to be. You have to be so careful on your side to document everything. Here's another question. How do you know when you need to increase headcount? If yes, how do you go about making the case to superior? So that's actually something I'm doing right now, is making the case for more designers. So I know we need an increase in headcount because you remember I was talking about there's good, better, and best things that we could be doing. There's actually a few best things right now that we're having to kind of just push off or drop off our list of things to do because we have limited bandwidth. And I think that's when you can say you need more people. So you need to make it like an interior audit of all your projects, rank them by good, better, best. And then when your best ones, the ones that are going to make a definite impact on the company, cannot be done with your current workforce, that's what you need to hire. And that actually, doing that interior audit is going to give you the fuel to be able to go to your superiors and say, we need more people. And that's the thing, is the designers, at least for me, it was kind of a learning experience to go from, in school, all they teach you is about what design process, what looks right, who are the great designers. They never tell you your design is going to have a direct impact on the bottom line of the company, right? The financial impact. And so when you start looking at good, better, and best projects, and you're able to go to your superior and say, hey, we're not able to do these projects that could have a positive impact on the bottom line of the company because we just don't have enough people. And when you're able to make that argument, that's where you can really get traction. Here's another question. This company has multiple products. How do we maintain brand consistency when they all need their own look and feel? So that is an interesting question. So how do you brand across multiple products, multiple branches? We actually see this with some of our university clients who they want a united brand, across the university, but then certain schools want variations of, the school of science, the school of arts, whatever it is, want something slightly different. And so what this will take, again, you got to put in the work here to establish an overarching brand, and then create different flavors for each brand. And you'll need to make different brand guidelines for each of those different departments. And using something like Lucidpress is helpful because you can be able to give everyone in their different departments or parts of the company access and be able to give them different templates, different brand guidelines. And as you as the creative director and your designers will be able to have access to all those templates and be able to watch over everything that is being made. How do you go about creating, this is one more question. How do you go about creating a brochure for one organization with 80 different chapters, where each chapter would need an area where their sponsors' logos vary from 1 to 10 logos and still manage to keep the brochure from being a mess? Okay, this is a great question. So usually how this works is the designer assigned to this would send out a request to say, everyone send me your logos, and 80 different chapters would send it in, and then he would have to keep all those files separated and be able to make 80 iterations of the same brochure. And that's what we're talking about, democratizing the design process, is that our designers can take something like that, right? So your designers can go and make one brochure and leave space for the logos. In fact, you can put in a grid so that they can see where to put the logos, and then distribute all those brochures to everyone, lock down the parts you don't want them to change, lock down the colors, lock down the images, lock down blocks of text you don't want them to change, and then let them just change the logos. And that's another thing where if your company has 80 chapters but only one designer, they can send out this brochure, and then the designer can go back and be able to access all their files easily without having to email files back and forth, without having to worry who knows how to use InDesign or not, and be able to make sure that everything's looking good. Another question, what do you do when your client gives you a poor or not clear brief? So this happens pretty frequently, and it's just a matter of education, right? And that's kind of the point where you go in and have to sit down with them and kind of really talk it out, right? That's kind of, it's kind of like having an awkward dating relationship, like conversation, like where are we? But you have to sit down and talk to them about what's your company's goals, what do you want for the company, where do you see yourself in 5 years, that sort of thing, to be able to help them work through this process of what should be in the creative brief. And if you have a positive working relationship with these people, with this client, then in the future, with future requests, they are more likely to be able to fill out the creative brief themselves. I should have included an example of a creative brief. Maybe I can send that out to you guys later, of a good creative brief and a way to get there. Another question. I am the first and only designer hired for the nonprofit I work for. Capabilities have expanded, and there are a few individuals in the organization that focus on other digital capabilities. What would you say are the best steps for expanding the design team? Looking for an intern, hiring other designers with office skill sets, looking for a junior designer. So it really depends on what the budget is like for the nonprofit you work at. But I think your best bet for like best impact is to hire a design student if you can. Someone in their junior or senior year who can work 10 to 20 hours a week is someone who is energized, focused, who wants to impress, who is trying to learn new things, and they're the ones who can jump in and really help you out. If you have the budget for a junior designer, someone who just graduated from school, that's awesome, and that's what I would do with that too. Next question is, how do you convince non-graphic designers in your company to buy into creative briefs, brand guidelines, templatized collateral, etc.? So again, this is taking time to educate. And fortunately, design is pretty fun. Like, we can make this pretty fun, and we can, what I've done in the past is gone through and shown some of the best, commercials and ads, and talked about why they worked and what the main message was, to be able to help people who don't usually, have a design background, to be able to catch the vision of what we're trying to do. There's a great TED Talk by Simon Sinek called The Power of Why, I believe, where he talks about, the priorities of what, how, why, what you make, how you make it, but most importantly, why you make it. Definitely go look that up. I've showed that to coworkers, to clients before, and it always helps drive home the point of what we're trying to get at with creative briefs. We're trying to get at the why of any project. Hope that helps. Okay, this is our last question. How can I convince my team of the importance of brand consistency? Yeah, I've had clients before who worked in completely different industries who just said, I don't really care. Like, I just need a brochure, whatever it is. I don't really care. Just make it, and I need it tomorrow. And that can even infect in large corporations too, like that sort of mindset. And so that's where, actually, this brand consistency report I've been talking about, that's where that can really help. For people who think more logically, don't usually get the artistic side of things, you can show this to them. It has data in it. You can say, this will affect your sales. This will affect the way people view your company. Here are numbers to back it up. And by educating people that way, through the logical side, you can get them on board with the processes you want to put in place. All right, that's it for the Q&A session. Thank you guys so much for sticking with me through this webinar. It's been great talking to you guys. Thank you so much for the questions. And let's get out there and power up our in-house design teams and make things happen. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Scott, for your great presentation. Watch for the follow-up thank you email with the recording of the webinar in 2 days. If you don't see it, please make sure to check your spam folder. Once again, this is where you can go to download the free ebook referenced in today's webinar. So it's www.lucidpress.com/pages/resources/report/the-of-brand-consistency. If you want to learn more about Lucidpress and how their product can help organizations improve brand consistency and streamline workloads for in-house designers, sign up for a demo at www.lucidpress.com/pages/resources/report/the-of-brand-consistency. talbot.com/schedule-a-demo. And if you didn't catch those web addresses, you can download it from the handouts on the GoToWebinar control panel, and it will also be included in the follow-up email you will receive in 1 to 2 days. So thank you so much, everyone, for attending. Thank you, Scott, and we do hope you enjoy the rest of your day.